This is a city car with a very small turning circle. You see that now. And that's also one of the most important features to buy this car. At least for me, I don't know how you feel about that. But that is why we're starting today showing you how to use the park assistance systems and how to park this very tiny car. I really like this rear view camera. This is optional. It doesn't come in the basic edition. Oh, there's pedestrians behind us, beeping as you can see. But with the video camera, the rear view camera, it makes it really easy to even go into the smallest entryways, to park it in small galleys or in front of a small garage maybe. And I don't even have to turn my back, but even if I would have, this car has a very good surround view, I think. You have windows everywhere, and when I turn my back I can see a lot through the rear. Advantages of the doors being able to be opened quite widely is good when you want to get into the car, but when you want to get out in a very small surrounding, it's a disadvantage that the doors are so long, but still it works. Especially when city driving, it is for me very important that the car is not too big. And this car feels very agile, and it is. Because it is so small, you can go through tiny little streets and you feel you have a lot of space still at your sides. You don't feel the sweat on your forehead like you have with some big cars when you have to go into parking spaces or you have to go through somewhere. Here you still have lots of space to your side, and even when you are in a difficult situation, you're very flexible. You can just turn your steering wheel and turn away. The optional GPS, as from the first test, is rather a failure because it shows we are there, but that's over there. I suspect it's a problem with the high houses, but that cannot be because it's basically a car for big cities like this one. We're in Barcelona here now, and that's actually a perfect city to test drive the new Smart Fortwo, because this car has been built for European cities. We can see that because Rome has been the most successful city in sales for this car so far. And with this model they also want to target Chinese and the US market. We have got the optional sports package here, which I would clearly not recommend for a city car, because when driving in the city or on a city motorway, you want a suspension that absorbs the bumps better than being very stiff. And now we will test the acceleration from 70 to 100. As you can see, we get along very well also on the motorway. With the 90 horsepower engine turbo we have here. But if you only use the car for city driving, you might also be fine with the smaller two engines, I think. Now let's look at the exterior. Before, the Smart Fortwo followed the design concept of one box, meaning you could only see one square box basically with nearly no hood. Now the Smart Fortwo has the concept of 1.5 box, and you can see the distinguished little hood over there. So this brings also some advantages with it. For example, it follows modern pedestrian safety requirements. And also, of course, has an effect on the look. So now let's have a closer look. With that box change in design, I think the Smart Fortwo has lost a little bit of its very distinguished look. It's not so special anymore, but a little bit more common and looks more alike like other small cars. When we first uploaded the video of the world premiere, we were astounded how many comments we got from you saying, "Oh my god, the Smart is so ugly." But some of you also love the new design. I think the new Smart Fortwo tends to be a little more Asian looking. I think it suits the Asian gusto a little bit, I think. But we have heard that this car in fact was just designed in Germany in the German design studio. I mean, look at it, you basically can't believe it that this is a German car, I think. The front grille in this white color is actually a plastic element. You notice that the color is not exactly the same as the chassis, and I think it might even change more, because you might know that from plastic elements, maybe on your keyboard or your computer, they tend to change color when exposed to light. And I really would like to know if this is going to happen here as well. I hope not. This is a rear-wheel driven car and the engine also sits in the back. But let's have a look what is under this small hood here. And as you can hear, it's plastic. It's really surprising. So this has a very funny way to be opened. Firstly, unlock here, and then I can lift this part up. And it's not so hard. As it's plastic, it's not very heavy. And now you can see all those fluids here. The battery is located here, and for example the wiper fluid, that is what is situated here. You could have expected maybe some storage area, but that is not the case. Let's see how it fits. And now we can close it. And when you park your car somewhere, actually you might think anyone can just open it and steal your very precious wiping fluid, for example. So there is the possibility, I heard, that you can actually lock this here. But somehow I cannot get the key in here and it doesn't work, but it's supposed to be able to be closed somehow. But here, this doesn't work. When you look at this microcar, you might wonder, how can this car actually be safe? And what happens to me when I sit in this car driving and get involved in an accident? Maybe even a frontal crash. That is what smart engineers wanted to try out when they let a Smart Fortwo crash into the way bigger S-Class at 50 kilometers per hour. Now let's look what happens. You can see here that the Smart is not damaged in the front as much as you would expect. So how can that be? Let's have a closer look at this car here behind me. You can see this orange part. This is what Smart calls a tritium cell. That's basically just a name, not a special material. The material that takes action here is very strong steel. And this steel starts under the hood and goes all the way up and below the car, way to the back. And that material also helps to absorb the very strong power produced at a crash, and it transports it to the back of the car where those very strong powers are released then. That is why the passengers are only minorly injured in this test case of crash, you have to say. And the back is a little bit more involved. Of course, this crash has been performed under testing circumstances, so it was a frontal crash. That might not always be the case in a true street situation, but I think it is a very good idea to make safety a very important issue, especially in such a small car. And smart engineers have been thinking very much and very strongly about how can we make this car as safe as possible, and that gives me as a customer a very good feeling about driving this car, to know that this very small tiny little car is nearly as safe as a car in the compact class. With this car we have the special edition one with the Passion trim level. Here you have those 16-inch alloys. Normally this trim level comes with 15-inch alloys, and behind that you can see that there are the disc brakes in the front, but in the back we have drum brakes. Some of you might be disappointed not to have disc brakes also in the back, but as this car is so lightweight, I think it's way enough. For the first time the Smart has received muscular shoulders, so it sits broader on the road, and hopefully you won't be bullied that much as you are always with a small car. I know, because I have driven lots of small cars in my life, and some people in bigger cars might feel a little bit stronger and come on very close to you from behind on the street. So now let's take a look at the interior. There are basically 3 trim levels. Prime is the basic trim level, and it has a black color scheme. Here, those orange contrast elements you can see here on the seats, or the contrast stitching, this is part of the Passion trim level. I mean, look at this very poppy interior. Doesn't it look very passionate, I have to say? And in this 3rd trim level, that is the Proxy trim level that has a blue and white color scheme. In this middle trim level, Passion, the most important element is this orange color you have here on the dashboard. And it's a question whether you like it. Do you like the orange color? I'm very interested in that. Please also write it in the comments what you think about this. But nevertheless, whether you like the color, one important thing is that it hides the black plastic beneath it. And I think it's a very nice idea to have a texture here on the dashboard. Of course, it also means you have to be a little bit more careful. You don't want to really scratch it. I don't know what happens to it, or how it works with the dust. How do you undust it? That would be a question of daily usage, and I think you have to be really on the move to always clean it, because otherwise it might get a bit dusty. Smart is all about city practicability, and you have very nice little features here. I think are very bright ideas. Of course you have those basic stuff like bottle holders or a coin holder here. I haven't seen this one for a very long time. But what I like is you have a little hidden space here, for example, where you can put your stuff, leave it even in the car, even though you're not supposed to do it. Somebody might break in, but I cannot see it there. Or what I also like are those holders here for your glasses. You can hide them in here. For sunglasses, for example, you want to keep in the car. Here, the glove department, you can open it like this. Is a little bit cheaply done, because it just falls down like this. But on the other hand, you have dampers here for the hand holders. I don't know if you can see that. It's if you put it down, it moves up quite slowly. I think this is always a very nice thing that feels a little bit worthy. And here I cannot turn that much around, but here's a net, maybe from magazines or anything. And what I also like is that you can actually put your stuff from the front right through to the back. Now let's look into the trunk. It's a split one. You open it firstly here, and then you pull this handle and let it go down. I would recommend to do it smoothly, because if you just let it fall, it goes like this. Here is a little hidden space, Very nice to hide your precious belongings from possible thieves or other people in your family. Maybe the chocolate you buy. Here also you have this cover, you can just remove it. And then you might also move this whole part by doing it here. It's supposed to work with one hand, but seriously, this is too hard for me to do it with one hand. So I rather use both hands, and you can just move it down. What goes in here? We do have a small trolley, a jacket, a backpack, and a small thing. I think 2 trolleys, no, they wouldn't work. But I think this is enough for your daily chores, for example. And if you are on a longer trip or have some time to kill, you can just sit on this one, because this is supposed to hold 100 kilograms. So there's a little bit fun here. I like this part because you can actually use your car for so many things, like for having a picnic. You have asked us if we can also show you the engine of the all-new Smart Fortwo, and of course we'll do that. We have prepared it a little bit because it's not that easy to access. The engine sits under here, and when you already start feeling this is a little bit warm. So be careful when you put temperature sensitive things on this mat. This is the isolation mat, which you have to move up here and put on the seats before you can see this. This is isolation material. And then you remove the screws, which we have done earlier a little bit to make it faster now. And then you lift this up, it's really hot, and we can see the engine. We're looking at the current top version of the engines in the Smart Fortwo that are available. We have the 90 horsepower turbo. There are also 2 smaller engines available that are naturally aspirated. But we are also waiting for the Brabus version that is expected to be launched in 2016, which will surely have over 100 horsepower. Here we can see how we have been driving on the past about 50 kilometers. I think this is some kind of marketing gag because it's supposed to be an eco kind of driving, but we have used 5.9 liters, even though we did have some curvy mountain roads in our tour plan. I think this is still too much. What is very nicely done is this neat climate unit here. You can turn it on, and then you are informed by this signal color lights which options you have chosen and can adjust it accordingly. Turn up the vent, for example, or adjust the temperature in the cabin with this magnifying glass. I think this is a very neat design idea. Here in the center console we do have the multimedia panel, which is an option. If you don't choose it, you might even get a car that doesn't have a radio, because you won't have anything here, just a slot to put anything in you need. Let's now look at the design. The first impression is very pop arty, and you have the different color schemes for the different things. Pictures, there aren't any in here, but what I do like is the feeling of the screen, and I also think the reaction time is quite good. We do not have a radio station near us. Let's have a look, put in an address. Yeah, well. As I mentioned earlier, while driving we weren't very satisfied with the GPS, because sometimes it showed us that we are in a different position from that which we actually were. I think that's a little bit weak for a GPS, and also the advices where to turn, they were a little bit confusing at times. But it's not that bad, there are worse GPS. Now let's look at the seating position. From the outside this car might look small, but when sitting in here you don't have the feeling. because look at my legs, they're quite long and I still have enough leg room. I don't feel squeezed in. That is a surprise for me, a very positive surprise. But still the seat feels uncomfortable on driving. And I think this is because the headrest is connected to the seat. This looks sporty, but it doesn't quite suit my needs because I feel I sit a little bit like this. I would like to turn it back a little bit. What I like is that I do have a seat heating here. That's also very important for me when driving in winter because I get cold very easily. This car is not for comfort on longer distances. This is a car where you go on short distances in the city, and that's what it does fulfill. And it's also quite fun to drive. Everything in the interior is geared at being funky and fun. So let's go. One thing we haven't told you so far is about the transmission. We are driving here a 5-gear speed manual transmission, and we found it quite pleasing while driving. It shifts very smooth, there isn't much resistance. But there are also better ones, I have to admit. For example, the one we drove in the Skoda Fabia. I will link to that video review in the video description. There is also the option available of a 6-speed dual clutch transmission. This is pretty unique in this segment. You only know this from bigger cars. So I find that is quite an interesting option. As a conclusion, we can say the all-new Smart Fortwo offers a radical design change, a slightly refined interior, important safety features, and for fans of the automatic gearbox you have the dual clutch transmission. I must say the most convincing thing for this model here is the design. When you want a very agile, dynamic city car, this model suits you very well, in my opinion, because it's just so versatile and dynamic, and you have this very small turning circle. That is what I really liked the most and really impressed me while trying it. I think it's also an important fact in society. As people are driving in cars and the cars get bigger, the traffic jams also get longer. If everyone would drive a Smart in a big city, you would have less traffic, and that's one thing I like very much. But of course you have to kind of sum up what is important to you when you buy such a car. This clearly is not a cheap car in this segment. You might have cars from other company that offers similar features for smaller price. So you might want to look before buying something and think about what is really important to me. Is design an important factor? Then this car is for you. And when you also look at status at a brand, Smart clearly is a brand that will impress your neighbors. Here in Germany, the Smart Fortwo starts just below 11,000 euros. And what is quite astonishing, that for only 600 euros more, you get a Smart Fortwo. What is also the case with the all-new Smart, that the Smart Fortwo is not a separate car anymore. The question is the Smart Fortwo a shortened Fortwo, or is the Fortwo an extended Fortwo? I would rather say the base is the Fortwo, as this is a cooperation with Renault Twingo. The Fortwo is the basic car. Take a look at the all-new Smart Fortwo. As I said, there's only 600 euros of price difference between the two, but there are 2 seats more. So if you were a loyal Smart customer and now have a Fortwo and have children in the meantime and you don't know where to put them, this might be a solution for you. And if you're still thinking, oh, I don't have children, it's just the 2 of us, or I'm alone, you might think, which one do I pick, the Smart Fortwo or the Fortwo? Now we'll have a closer look. When we look at the front, we see the Smart Fortwo looks the same as the Fortwo. That is not the case from the side profile. Here you see the second seating row makes it longer. The Smart Fortwo is about 2.7 meters of length. The Smart Fortwo is 3.5 meters long. This also gives this car a bigger turning circle. The Smart Fortwo has a small turning circle of just below 7 meters, whereas this one has a turning circle of about 9 meters. That's a significant change, but still very agile, I think. Somebody is with the new design of the Smart, so we arouse a lot of attention with the orange car, of course, because it's a very poppy color you see on the streets, but also with this one people are looking at us, so you can see this design is very polarizing. So what is also an important aspect when you look at this car, you should also compare it to the Renault Twingo. Why? Because on the technical side the cars are 70% alike. But what of course is different is the price. Smart is always more expensive than a Renault, and decide for yourself if it is worth it to you. We will link to our video about the Renault Twingo in the video description as soon as the Twingo video is online. From the interior, the Smart Fortwo and the Smart Fortwo basically look the same, except for the size, of course. But what is quite interesting to see here, we see a different trim level. This is the trim level Proxy with its distinct white and blue design. At the seats, we see a combination of artificial leather and blue fabric. And this applies to all of the cockpit here. Here we also have some plastic elements in shiny white, what I like very much. It makes the interior very bright. When you sit here in the Smart, even though the weather is not the best today, it's a very bright, light atmosphere which gives you a little bit of joy just by sitting here. That is again an aspect of driving for fun and having fun of your car, which is a distinct aspect of the Smart, I think. What I also like is the panoramic roof here, and it is a split roof. You have a panoramic roof here and one for the backseat passengers as well. Sitting in the front, the seating comfort is the same as the Fortwo, I would say. You have basically the same seats. It's at least there is no difference I immediately feel when I sit in this car. And this is kind of the position you have also here with the headrests, for example. And about the back, let's see where those 80 centimeters extra in this car really go. You can open the doors 90 degrees. That is quite exceptional and makes it easy, for example, to put a seat for children into the bag or something big you want to adjust here. Also, what is new? The windows, you can have those foldable windows. I think that is quite a trend at the moment. I've seen it in different cars now, but of course it's also to save money. If you had different windows, it would cost. And now let's see how the seating is in the back. So this is quite funny actually, because what does it look like when I sit here from the outside perspective? It kind of feels very small to me, the seat, but I'm very tall. I think this seat looks a little bit like a children's seat in the first place, because it is so tiny. So can I adjust the seat somewhere? I don't think so. So when I sit here, well, yeah, it feels a little bit like you're on a waiting position somewhere where you don't want to stay very long. But if you have the choice rather to walk or to be taken by car of some of your friends, for example in the middle of the night, I would go for this option. But if I had to go on a longer trip, on the Autobahn for example, this might be a little bit tricky. But at least I can look out of the window. What I think is a very good idea to have those cup holders here in the back. When you travel with children, they might have pens, pencils or other toys to store somewhere, and you have them here. You can have cups in here or a bottle over here. That is a very nice option. This car hasn't been used very often, but you can see already some spots here on the white artificial leather. And here, for example, the stitches, they haven't been sewn properly. They have little bumps in them. And that doesn't look very premium to me, even though Smart as a brand is supposed to be premium. Now let's compare the trunk. You have the first change when opening it. It's not divided into two sections, it's just one. And then look at our belongings. They are the same, stored in this one. So from a technical side, actually the trunk of the Fortwo is a little bit bigger from size, but you can barely notice it, and effectively it doesn't make a difference. Our stuff is stored here in almost the same way. But the main change is you have more space when you flip the seats. You take out this and then you just have to pull a string here, and then you can push the seats forward and have significantly more space, and that makes a real difference. And when you have the seats down, you can see the transition here is all flat. I think that's quite handy. And when you even push the front seat down, you have even more space, for example for surfboard or go to IKEA. The Smart 4 is not as agile to turn in narrow streets